Welcome, Wanderers. My name is Mark, and today we are going to be reading At the Speed of Shakespeare. We're going to start with the play Richard II. This is the first of Shakespeare's history plays. It's not the first one he wrote, but if you consider his history plays, it's the one that starts the earliest. I guess if you consider King John to be a history, I don't know, then that would be earlier. But in any event, there's two tetralogies. For Shakespeare, earlier in his career, he wrote the three parts of Henry VI, and then Richard III. And then later on in his career, when he was at or near the height of his powers, he went to an earlier time and wrote a second group of four plays, Richard II, then the two parts of Henry IV, and then Henry V. So together you have Richard II through Richard III, a total of 8 history plays. So we're going to start with Richard II. Richard II is a play about a bad king. Richard is not a good king, but he's a very poetic king. He speaks very well, very beautifully, and this play has some of the best language that I've ever read. And well, maybe you'll agree. I don't know. Let's get started. So the play starts. Richard II, king, is sitting on the throne, and he is approached by two men, Henry Bolingbroke, who is Richard's first cousin, and a man named Thomas Mowbray. Henry and Thomas, or Bolingbroke and Mowbray, have some kind of dispute. It's not exactly clear from the language here what the dispute was. I know that there's historical sources that can tell you this, but in any event, the issue here is that the two of them have a dispute, and they've come before the king to settle it. I think it may have had to do with some kind of some sort of assassination plot that went badly, and then now the two of them are arguing about who was at fault, and in any event, the two of them have a dispute. And I guess in those days, before the two people were going to have a duel to settle matters, they would have to appear before the king. Maybe that was just what the etiquette was in those days. But in any event, so they're hearing before King Richard. So this is Richard II. I don't know if I should tell you what's going to happen in this play. All right, I'll tell you. Richard's a bad king, and what's going to happen is that, well, let's wait. So, Act 1, Scene 1 of Richard II. By the way, this is the first Shakespeare play that I ever read. It was assigned in class in 7th grade English. I did not understand the play at the time. I did not like it. I'm not even sure I even read it, or at least all of it. It took me a long time to be able to read Shakespeare with anything approaching appreciation for it. Here we are, Act 1, Scene 1. King Richard says, so it says, enter King Richard, John of Gaunt, with other nobles and attendants. And King Richard says, old John of Gaunt. John of Gaunt is Henry Bolingbroke's father, and King Richard's uncle. Edward III had a number of sons. I think he had a total of 7 sons. And his eldest son, Edward, whose name was also Edward the Black Prince, called that, I think, because he wore black armor. He was supposed to be the king. He was the heir apparent to the throne, and was, from what I understand, was a strong soldier, a powerful man, and perhaps would have made a good, strong king like his father. But unfortunately, he died. A ship sank, and so he died. He predeceased his father, the king, but under the laws of primogeniture, the crown went would go not to Edward's second eldest surviving son, but rather because Edward the Black Prince had a son who was living, Richard of Bordeaux. Then Richard of Bordeaux becomes Richard II. Richard II was a child at the time, and so Richard's uncle, John of Gaunt, effectively ruled England. John of Gaunt's a very strong man, a strong leader, but then at some point Richard is old enough to take the crown himself, assume the throne of England, and Richard is just not really a good king. We're gonna see why. But he likes playing the king. He likes being in charge of things. He likes directing things. He likes all the courtly procedures and you'll see, or rather you'll hear. King Richard says, "Old John of Gaunt, time-honored Lancaster," Gaunt is from the so-called House of Lancaster, "hast thou, according to thy oath and bond, brought hither Henry Hereford." Henry Hereford is another name for Henry Bolingbroke. "Thy bold son, here to make good the boisterous late appeal, when then our leisure would not let us hear, against the Duke of Norfolk, Thomas Mowbray." And Gaunt says, "I have, my liege. Here to make good the boisterous late appeal, which then our leisure would not let us hear, against the Duke of Norfolk, Thomas Mowbray." All right, so perhaps there was some earlier time when maybe the king, the last time they met, the king didn't have time to hear the dispute between Thomas Mowbray, who was also called the Duke of Norfolk, and John of Gaunt's son, Henry Hereford, or Henry Bolingbroke, also known as. And Gaunt says, "I have, my liege." And King Richard says, "Tell me, moreover, hast thou sounded him?" I love that. "Hast thou sounded him, if he appeal the Duke on ancient malice, or worthily, as a good subject should, on some known ground of treachery in him?" And I think what he's saying there is on ancient malice. In other words, is this some old thing, like some old business, bringing up old stuff, or is this some known ground of is there real treachery going on here, or is there just some ancient dispute, some old dispute between these two? In other words, like why have you come here before me? And this is actually just my own interpretation, the way I read this, and my own interpretation of this. You may read it differently, and I'm sure many have and will. Gaunt says, "As near as I could sift him." That's a good word, sift him. Shakespeare has used that word in other places. He must have liked that idea of sifting someone. When you ask someone questions to find out what's going on, why do you want to do this, what is your purpose here, Shakespeare described this as sifting them, and I think that's a good way to think about it, as if the person were sand that you put inside of a sifter, and we're trying to find out, okay, what's really here, what's really going on? Do we have a real dispute here? Do you have a real reason for this, or what's going on here? And Gaunt says, "As near as I could sift him on that argument, on some apparent danger seen in him, aimed at your highness, no inveterate malice," meaning that there was some treachery against the king, and not against, this wasn't some old dispute between two. This isn't some resentment that Henry has against Thomas Mowbray. This isn't something personal, but this actually has some treachery against the king. And King Richard says, then call them to our presence." Richard likes to use the royal we. He says to our presence. He means to my presence, but he refers to the king as a we. It's fascinating the way they do that. Then an attendant leads us to go get the two men, the two disputants. And now, while he's going and getting these two, King Richard then addresses the people who are still there. So that's going to be John of Gaunt and other nobles and attendants. Now he's going to make a little speech. Richard likes to make speeches, and he's very good at it, but he loves to hear himself talk. And so do I. "Face to face and frowning brow to brow, ourselves, he says, ourselves will hear the accuser and the accused freely speak. High-stomached are they both, and full of ire. In rage, deaf as the sea, hasty as fire." I love that metaphor, the piling two metaphors on top of another. In rage, deaf as the sea, hasty as fire. you think about it. What is rage like? What is it like when someone is full of rage? Okay, how deaf are they? Well, they're deaf as the sea. How deaf is the sea? Well, do you try to argue with the sea? Try to argue with the ocean? Does it answer you? Does it bend to your will? Can you persuade it? No, it keeps on going. It doesn't hear you. So when someone is enraged, they just don't. They're not hearing anything. They're not hearing any kind of persuasion. They're deaf as the sea. And how hasty are they? You don't think of rage as being hasty. Deaf, perhaps. That when you're enraged, you don't really hear other people trying to say, hey, why don't you calm down? Why don't you think about this for a minute? Why don't you, right, count to 10? But about that count to 10, right, hasty as fire, right? Shakespeare says rage is hasty. And how hasty is it? It's hasty as fire. You don't think of fire as hasty, but it is. When the fire is going, if combustible material is nearby, the fire will leap right to it. The fire doesn't sit around and think about it and go, well, should I ignite that dry tinder that's right next to me? No, it just goes up. That's why you gotta be careful with fire. It's hasty. Enter Bolingbroke and Mowbray. Bolingbroke says, the first thing he does is he greets the king. Many years of happy days befall, my gracious sovereign, my most loving liege. Do you think he means that? Probably not. But he's saying it. He knows what to say. And Mowbray tries to trying to outdo Bolingbroke in showing respect to the king. Each day still better others' happiness, until the heavens, envying earth's good hap, add an immortal title to your crown. I'm not exactly sure what every word is doing in those three lines there, but I think the point is that he's just outdoing that you are so great that that you should be immortal, or your crown should be immortal, or the king should live forever, or something like that. That the king belongs in he should be in the heavens, although perhaps that's also it's kind of a implicit way of saying that he wishes Richard were dead so we could have a different king, because Richard's not a good king. But anyway, King Richard says, we thank you both, yet one but flatters us, as well appeareth by the cause you come. Right, only one of you flatters. One of you isn't being serious here. One of you is just trying to flatter us, although I'm sure Richard loves the flattery. As well appeareth by the cause you come, namely to appeal each other of high treason. Cousin of Hereford, what dost thou object against the Duke of Norfolk, Thomas Mowbray? What is your dispute against him? And Bolingbroke says, first, now he probably has to be careful here, because he probably can't exactly tell the truth. I think I read somewhere that once that the real dispute has something to do with they were trying to murder, I think maybe one of their uncles, or one of Henry's uncles, Richard's uncle, and somehow this is tied into they want to take the crown away from Richard, but the whole thing got botched, and now they're just kind of trying to get out of it by accusing each other. First, heaven be the record to my speech, in the devotion of a subject's love, tendering the precious safety of my prince, and free from other misbegotten hate. Come I, appellant. That's probably the third or fourth time that Shakespeare has used the word appellant or appeal in just this scene. And we've probably gotten into it. He likes that word, I guess. To this princely presence, now, Thomas Mowbray, do I turn to thee. So I guess he was looking at the king. Now he's turning to Thomas Mowbray, who would be standing right beside him here. He's like, now I turn to you. And mark my greeting well. For what I speak, my body shall make good upon this earth, or my divine soul answer it in heaven. Thou art a traitor and a miscreant, too good to be so, and too bad to live. Since the more fair and crystal is the sky, the uglier seem the clouds that in it fly. Once more, the more to aggravate the note, with a foul traitor's name stuff I thy throat, and wish to please my sovereign ere I move, what my tongue speaks my right drawn sword may prove. In those days, in the Middle Ages, this is what's called the High Middle Ages, if two people had a dispute and they could not persuade each other, then they would say that, well, the way we're going to settle this is we're going to fight, and whoever dies, that meant that God God is showing us the right person, because God will make sure that the person who is correct in this dispute will live, and that the one who's wrong will die. And so that's how he's saying, what my tongue speaks, my right drawn sword may prove. And Mowbray says in response, let not my cold words here accuse my zeal. 'Tis not the trial of a woman's war. The bitter clamor of two eager tongues can arbitrate this cause betwixt us twain. What he's saying is that words aren't going to do it here. We need to fight this out like men. The blood is hot that must be cooled for this. Yet can I not of such tame patience boast as to be hushed and not at all to say. Yet can I not of such tame patience boast as to be hushed and not at all to say. He doesn't speak as clearly as Bolingbroke does, which is good, because Bolingbroke's in this play a lot more than Mowbray. First, the fair reverence of your highness curbs me from giving reins and spurs to my free speech, which else would post until it had returned. These terms of treason doubled down his throat, setting aside his high blood's royalty, and let him be no kinsman to my liege. I do defy him, and I spit at him. Call him a slanderous coward and a villain, which to maintain I would allow him odds, and meet him were I tied to run afoot even to the frozen ridges of the Alps. This is taking place in England, by the way. Or any other ground inhabitable, wherever Englishman durst set his foot. Englishman durst set his foot. Meantime, let this defend my loyalty. By all my hopes, most falsely doth he lie. It's a lot harder to figure out how he doesn't speak as clearly as Bolingbroke does. Bolingbroke's, I think, a better poet than Mowbray. But his point is that, yeah, we're ready to fight this out. I'm not a liar. He's the liar. I'm not the liar. Let's fight this out and find out who's really telling the truth. And Bolingbroke, throwing down his gauge, I guess what they do in those days is they take a glove, like that metal glove that they wear in battle, and he and he takes it out and he throws it on the ground. That's your way of challenging someone. You throw your glove on the ground. You're called a gauge. He says to Mowbray, pale, trembling coward. It's very powerful words. There I throw my gauge, disclaiming here the kindred of the king, and lay aside my high blood's royalty, which fear, not reverence, makes thee to accept. If guilty dread hath left thee so much strength as to take up mine honour's pawn, then stoop. By that and all the rights of knighthood else will I make good against thee, arm to arm, what I have spoke, or thou canst worse devise. And Mowbray takes up the gauge. He picks it up. There's going to be a duel here, some kind of a fight. I take it up, and by that sword I swear which gently laid my knighthood on my shoulder, right, by the very sword that I was knighted by, I'll answer thee in any fair degree, or chivalrous design of knightly trial. This is so magnificent the way this is written. These two men who are, all they're saying is that they just want to fight each other, but they speak so nobly of this. You gotta get the sense that Shakespeare loved writing like this. He loved writing about the court. He loved writing, using all this language that they use. This very powerful and dramatic language. The dramatic vigor, you're gonna hear me say that a lot. The dramatic vigor that Shakespeare puts into his line is for me, for my money, is what is the best part of all about reading this. Oh, he's not done yet. Mowbray says, and when I mount, meaning when he gets on a horse, and I guess they're going to do that thing with the lances where they go like this, and they ride at full speed, and they try to knock the other one off the horse. Alive may I not light, if I be traitor or unjustly fight. And King Richard says, what doth our cousin lay to Mowbray's charge? Wow, fighting words. It must be great that can inherit us so much as of a thought of ill in him. Richard's loving this. He's loving watching this stuff rise up, and he can be the MC here. He can be the master of ceremonies and direct things, and pepper everybody's challenges with his own poetry. And Bolingbroke says, look what I speak, my life shall prove it true, that Mowbray hath received 8,000 nobles in name of leadings for your highness's soldiers. Oh, I'm sorry, in name of lendings for your highness's shoulder. Let's read that again. in name of lendings for your highness's soldiers, which he hath detained for lewd employments, like a false traitor and injurious villain, besides I say, and will in battle prove, or here or elsewhere to the furthest verge that ever was surveyed by English eye, that all the treasons for these 18 years complotted and contrived in this land fetch from false Mowbray their first head in spring. I think he's more describing the amount of treachery, and he's saying he has 8,000 nobles. And further I say, and further will maintain upon his bad life to make all this good, that he did plot the Duke of Gloucester's death. Okay, so I guess this is what happened here. The Duke of Gloucester, who I think is one of Richard's uncles, was dead or was killed, and Bolingbroke is saying that Mowbray is responsible for this. Suggest his soon-believing adversaries, and consequently, like a traitor coward, sluiced out his innocent soul through streams of blood. Which blood? Like sacrificing Abel's. He's referring to Abel from the Bible. Am I thy brother's keeper? You remember that story from the Bible, Cain and Abel? God favors Abel's sacrifice, and Cain is jealous. Actually, it says he's wroth. And then, as out in the field, and then kills Abel just like that. And then when God asks Cain, where is thy brother Abel? And Cain answers, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? And God says, your brother's blood cries out to me from the soil. It's a very chilling image in the book of Genesis. So which blood? Like sacrificing Abel. So cries even from the tongueless caverns of the earth. I love that line, the tongueless caverns of the earth. I think in another play, what was it in Hamlet, where Hamlet says, murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak with most miraculous organ. Shakespeare must have liked this image of how when somebody dies, they can no longer speak for themselves and say who killed them or what happened. And so, but the evidence of it must speak through other means. And so here Shakespeare is drawing reference to the tongueless caverns of the earth. To me for justice and rough chastisement, and by the glorious worth of my descent, this arm shall do it, or this life be spent. I'm ready to kill Mowbray, who is responsible for Gloucester, who is a latter-day Abel. I will kill him in battle, in single combat, or I myself will die, and I'm okay with that. King Richard, this is great. How high a pitch his resolution soars. He's kind of got this ironic note to this. How high a pitch his resolution soars. Thomas of Norfolk, what sayest thou to this? I think to Richard, he's got this kind of he's sort of removed from this. He can have this, not quite a sneering, but almost a self-ironic way of talking about this, almost like he's finding this amusing. I think that's what it is. He speaks with almost a type of amusement, because this isn't his problem, although it is going to be his problem. We'll see. But he says, how high a pitch his resolution soars. Thomas of Norfolk, what sayest thou to this? Mowbray, oh, let my sovereign turn away his face, and bid his ears a little while be deaf, till I have told this slander of his blood, how God and good men hate so foul a liar. At this point, doesn't it seem like the two men, Mowbray and Bolingbroke, are kind of just saying the same thing over and over again? Why does Richard let them go on like this? You wonder, would either of these men, would Henry Bolingbroke have let it go on like this, or would he just say, okay, do you accuse this person? We'll see later that a lot of this play is about the contrasting personalities and natures of Richard and Bolingbroke. And Richard is someone who likes to hear himself talk. He likes to speak poetry all the time. He likes to talk about stuff. Whereas Bolingbroke is more of a man of action. He just wants to, what's the next thing that we need to do? Let's get to it. Let's do it. And whatever happens, happens. We're going to do what we can do. King Richard says, Mowbray, impartial are our eyes and ears. Were he my brother, nay, my kingdom's heir, as he is but my father's brother's son. Now by my scepter's awe I make a vow. So he's got to be holding up the scepter. The scepter is, I guess, this this like golden staff or something that the king holds. Like when you have the crown and the scepter, the two things go together. It means that now you rule because you hold this stick, this fancy looking stick called a scepter. It's a great word. Now by my scepter's awe I make a vow, such neighbor nearness to our sacred blood should nothing privilege him nor partialize this unstooping firmness of my upright soul. He is our subject, Mowbray, so art thou. Free speech and fearless I to thee allow. And Mowbray says, I'm not quite sure what Richard's getting into here. Till I have told this slander of his blood how God. You think maybe Richard's saying something like Mowbray, okay, like, take it easy there. He is but my father's brother's son. Now by my scepter's art I make a vow, such neighbor nearness to our sacred blood should nothing privilege him nor partialize the unstooping firmness of my upright soul. Oh, I see. And bid his ears a while be deaf. Mowbray saying be deaf till I have told the slander of his blood. Okay, so Mowbray, okay, here's what happened here. It took me a second. Sorry. Mowbray here is drawing reference to the fact that Richard and Bolingbroke are first cousins. They're very closely related. And so what he's saying is, turn away your ears and bid your ears be deaf. Don't listen to this because I know he's your blood. And Richard's saying, whoa, just because he's my blood, just because he is my first cousin, my father's brother's son, does not mean that I can't be impartial here. He is our subject, Mowbray, so art thou, right? You're both when you come here, you are both subjects. Free speech and fearless I to thee allow. You can say whatever you need to say. Speak your heart. Mowbray says then, Bolingbroke, so he's addressing Bolingbroke, as low as to thy heart, through the false passage of thy throat thou liest. 3 parts of that receipt I had for Calais, dispersed I duly to his highness's soldiers. So now they're talking about the 8,000 soldiers and how this dispute worked out. I'm not really sure how that what all happened. The other part reserved I by consent, for that my sovereign liege was in my debt upon remainder of a dear account since last I went to France to fetch his queen. I wonder if maybe Henry is accusing Mowbray of taking 8,000 soldiers that were supposed to be for the king and using it for his own use, kind of like somebody, say a public official, looting the public fisc, public funds for their own use. And now he has to have some kind of now he's got to show the receipts of no, I know it looks like I stole it, but no, here's my story. Here's what really happened. I did not use it for myself. I don't know. It's kind of the sense I'm getting here of how this was interesting. You learn about all these little things that happened, how the courts worked, the royal court in those days. Since last I went to France to fetch his queen. So I guess Richard's queen is French. To fetch his, I don't know if that means that to get his queen, maybe she was staying there and he went to go escort her back, or maybe to fetch his queen, meaning to get her in the first place, that it was Mowbray's job to go and, okay, Richard has been arranged to be married to, I think her name is Anne, this woman who's going to be his queen. I'm not sure about that. I think her name is Anne. Does it tell us in the dramatis personae? It just says queen. Thanks. Okay. Anyway. To fetch his queen is sort of a kind of a rough way to refer to fetch his queen. Now swallow down that lie, for Gloucester's death I slew him not, but to my own disgrace neglected my sworn duty in that case. And then to Gaunt, now he turns to Henry's father. For you, my noble lord of Lancaster, the honorable father to my foe, once did I lay in ambush for your life, a trespass that doth vex my grieved soul. Oh, that word vex is there. That word's going to be used later on in this play. It's a good word, vex. Vex my grieved soul. But ere I last received the sacrament, I did confess it, meaning I guess the sacrament of confession, and exactly begged your grace's pardon, and I hope I had it. This is my fault. As for the rest appealed, there's appealed again, it issues from the rancor of a villain, a recreant and most degenerate traitor, which in myself I boldly will defend, and interchangeably hurl down my gage. Oh, he's throwing his gauge down now. He already picked up the gauge. They were already joined and they're going to fight, but now he's doing it again. Upon this overweening traitor's foot, to prove myself a loyal gentleman, even in the best blood chambered in his bosom. He throws down his gauge. Bolingbroke picks it up. In haste whereof, and there's the haste, hasty as fire, ciao, whereof most heartily I pray your highness to assign our trial day. I wonder if this was something that happened in those days, that if you wanted to challenge someone to a fight, you'd throw down your gauge, but if you really meant it, then you would throw it down, like after you picked up their gauge, now you'd throw down yours. That means, oh, now it's really on. King Richard, wrath-kindled gentleman. There's the wrath, the anger, the rage, and the fire, the hasty fire, right? It's like playing with those words and putting them together in different combinations. Be ruled by me. He doesn't say us, be ruled by me. I wonder if that's a mistake or if that was deliberate, or maybe showing how Richard is just, for some reason, doesn't use the royal we in that word. Be ruled by me. Be ruled by me. Maybe it's just more poetic. Let's purge this choler spelled C-H-O-L-E-R, it's a fancy word for anger, without letting blood. All right, now bloodletting used to be a medical treatment that has long since been discredited as doing quite the opposite, having quite the opposite effect. But in any event, that was considered a medical treatment. This we prescribe, right? He's continuing with the doctor metaphor. Though no physician, deep malice makes too deep incision. Forget, forgive, conclude, and be agreed. Our doctors say this is no month to bleed. Oh, now he's rhyming. Good uncle, let this end where it begun. Will calm the Duke of Norfolk. You, your son. Norfolk, your son. He ruled by me. So what did he say me? Me doesn't rhyme with anything. Gaunt says, to be a makepeace shall become my age. Throw down, my son, the Duke of Norfolk's gauge. Now John of Gaunt is telling his son, okay, throw down the gauge. We're not going to, the king doesn't want us to have a fight, so listen to the king and throw it down. The king does not want you two to fight. And King Richard says, and Norfolk, throw down his, all right? Listen, boys, stop this fighting, and I want to see you shake hands and say you're sorry. That's how I read this. And Gaunt says, when, Harry, when? Obedience bids, I should not bid again. Your father is telling you now in front of the king and everybody here, all the lords and attendants, that you should be doing this. Okay, great, thank you. Thanks. Sorry about that. Be ruled by me. Where was I? When Harry went. Okay. So now he's got it. Henry's not doing it. He's disobeying his father in front of everybody. And King Richard, Norfolk, throw down. We bid. There is no boot. I don't know what the meaning of the word boot is there, but the point is that now the king and John of Gaunt are saying, both of you, and these men outrank the two disputants, throw it down, but these two men are not going to be dishonored in this way. No, we are sworn to fight, and that's, they're ready to, fight to the death, so I guess they don't really care if they disobey somebody who outranks them. Mowbray leaning, right now he's kneeling to the king. Well, it's important, remember this, that he kneels. You ever notice that? Myself I throw, dread sovereign, at thy foot. My life thou shalt command, but not my shame. The one my duty owes, but my fair name, despite of death that lives upon my grave, to dark dishonors use thou shalt not have. This is interesting. He's saying that even if I die, my name will live on, and so I have to, now that he's picked up my gauge, and I've picked up his, honor Now it's about my name, the name that's going to live on after me. I can't just not back down now. Now there's something at stake here that's even more important than my own life. I am disgraced, impeached, and baffled here, pierced to the soul with slander's venomed spear. The which no balm can cure, but his heart blood, which breathed this poison. And there he ends in the middle of a line, and King Richard finishes the line and rhymes with the last one that Mowbray said, where he said his heart blood, which breathed his poison. And King Richard says, rage must be withstood. And in those days, I guess in this rhyming scheme, blood and stood are considered to rhyme. So Richard is listening to what people are saying, and he's finishing their line for them and rhyming with them. That's how good of a poet he is. Give me his gauge. Lines make leopards tame. Lines make leopards tame, right? Meaning King Richard, he's the lion. Maybe he's drawing reference to the fact that he's the second King Richard of that king of the name Richard. The first King Richard the First, was Richard the Lionheart. So maybe he's making reference to that, but or just that the lion is the king of the jungle, or maybe both. I'm not sure what the point of the leopards are. Maybe perhaps the leopard was associated with Mowbray for some reason. I don't know. Leopards have meaning too. All animals in these days in this poetry have special meanings. Lines make leopards tame. And Mowbray says, yea, but not change his spots. It's a good comeback, Mowbray. Good for you. Take but my shame, and I resign my gage. Take but my shame, and I resign my gage. My dear, dear Lord, the purest treasure mortal times afford is spotless reputation, that away men are but gilded loam or painted clay. A jewel in a 10 times barred up chest is a bold spirit in a loyal breast. Mine honor is my life, both grow in one. Take honor from me, and my life is done. Right, you take my honor, and everything else is gone. This theme of honor is very important. This is going to be something that Shakespeare is going to work with in this play and also in the next play, especially the next one, Henry IV, Part 1. Honor is a very big theme in there, and we'll see all the different ways that honor sets events in motion and keeps them going. And does it lead to good results? I don't know. We'll see. Mine honor is my life, both grow in one. Take honor from me, and my life is done. Oh, I already read that. Then, dear my liege, mine honor let me try, in that I live, and for that I will die. I will die for honor. And King Richard to Bolingbroke says, cousin, throw up your gauge. Do you begin? And Bolingbroke says, O God, defend my soul from such deep sin. Shall I seem crestfallen in my father's sight? Or with pale beggar fear impeach my height, ere before this outdared dastard. It's the first time I ever read that word. Dastard. Ere my tongue shall wound my honor with such feeble wrong, or sound so base a parle, my teeth shall tear the slavish motive of recanting fear, and spit it bleeding in his high disgrace, where shame doth harbor, even in Mowbray's face. And exit Gaunt. So Gaunt leaves. And I don't know if he leaves because now he's being disobeyed and he just doesn't want to see this anymore. And King Richard says, we were not born to sue, but to command, which since we cannot do to make you friends, be ready, as your lives shall answer it at Coventry upon St. Lambert's Day. There shall your swords and lances arbitrate the swelling difference of your settled hate. Since we cannot atone you, we shall see justice design the victor's chivalry. Lord Marshal, command our officers at arms, be ready to direct these home alarms. So that's it. They wouldn't throw down their gauges. They're ready to fight. The king is going to appoint a day, St. Lambert's Day, Coventry. So Coventry is a place. And on St. Lambert's Day, which must be some special date, there your swords and lances arbitrate the swelling difference of your settled hate. That's a beautiful way to say it. That you two have a dispute, and you both have all these fighting words against each other, and now you're ready to fight. You have to wonder sometimes if maybe the trying to convince them to throw it down was yet again another way of I wonder if all these little things about throwing down the gauge, then the other one picks it up, and then the other one throws it down, and then he picks it up, and they have to keep going back and forth. And then the king and a high-ranking nobleman, John of Gaunt, try to convince them to stop. I wonder if this was all part of like a long way of a medieval way of saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? Right? If you delete this file, it's permanently deleted. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure you want to delete this?" Maybe that's what they're saying here, right? Are you absolutely sure that you guys don't want to back down? Can we maybe not find another way? Maybe this is just how they did it. It's just that they fought to the death, but if you're going to fight to the death, you better be sure that you're going to do it. We're going to give you lots of ways to get off this, train, or whatever you want to call, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's fascinating, though. You get to see how medieval fighting worked and how they challenged each other. It wasn't quite so quick. But in any event, these two men are set to fight each other. I think that's enough for one day. Thank you for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Oh.